Welcome to this joint PayTrace and Fidesic webinar. My name is Sam Johnson. We've got a few guests here as well that are going to be presenting. We'll introduce them in a moment. But as we kick off this webinar, I do want to go over just some quick housekeeping. This is a live webinar that if you're here, you're watching it with us. If you are watching the recording on one of our YouTube channels or other channels, um, we're going to provide lots of contact information so that if you do have additional questions, follow up, you can reach out to us. But if you are live, if you have questions, comments, emotional outbursts, we'd love to field some of those. Feel free, open up the Q&A box that's on your little webinar panel. Send those in throughout the presentation, and we're going to carve out a few minutes at the end of today's call to go ahead and tackle that. So, why are you here? Well, we are coming off of the biggest Microsoft Dynamics community event of the year, Summit, which was just in Orlando, Florida. And with that, we get a lot of questions about accounts receivable, accounts payable, just payments in general in the Microsoft Dynamics space. And a lot of the times, right, PayTrace, we're the AR team, Fidesic's the AP guys. We get kind of the opposite questions. Do you do AP? Well, no. Do you do AR? Not really. But we have some fantastic partners. So the goal for today is to showcase two of our solutions so that uh, you can have a comprehensive full payment solution within your Business Central environment. So, with that said, I do want to introduce our presenters today. Um, we have from the Fidesic team, Kevin Pritchard. Welcome, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Good to be here.
Awesome to have you. Kevin is the VP of Product and Growth, and I was reading his little bio that he sent me. He's a big fan of AI tools and a nerd about accounts payable, which makes sense because you're on an AP solution. Um, and then joining us from the PayTrace side, we have Carlton Ortega, and Carlton is kind of the brains behind the PayTrace ERP solutioning team. Way smarter than pretty much anybody I've ever met. So very happy to have him on here leading the charge on that. Welcome, Carlton.
Thanks for having me, Sam, and thank you for the kind words there.
Awesome. And then I guess I'm kind of hosting this. You're stuck with me, kind of adding some color to this. I'm Sam Johnson. I'm the partner success manager at PayTrace. So we've got about 45 minutes worth of content today. So strap in. The agenda of this is we're going to kind of just bounce back and forth off of each other. So we're going to start off looking at some accounts payable solution. Kevin over on the Fidesic team is going to walk through the kind of the Fidesic solutions offering and how they make accounts payable in the Microsoft Dynamics space simple. And then we're going to go ahead and take that over and talk about the AR solutioning that PayTrace offers. Both of our teams are going to show a brief demo. It's not going to be a full comprehensive demo. So if you do have an appetite to see a little bit more, at the end, we're going to get into some Q&A, some next steps, and we're going to share with you how you can get in touch with our team so that we can have some follow-up discussions and see how we can make this a good fit. So without further ado, Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Sam. So yeah, echoing what was already said, this is just sort of a shortened version of a demo. We usually do like 45 minutes to an hour just on the accounts payable side when we do like a one-on-one demo with people. So happy to get into the weeds in those conversations, and I love talking details on that sort of thing. So if any of this sparks interest, definitely reach out to us. We'll give you the primer version of it here today, and hopefully sparks enough interest that you'll start the convo with us. So that would be much appreciated. In terms of Fidesic itself as a company, a brief overview about us. We've actually been around since 2008, and we've really been focused heavily on the Dynamics channel for the past 5 or so years. If you've been to the conference scene, Summit, as was mentioned at the top, you've probably seen me around. Always happy to have those conversations at the events. We're going to try to keep our presence up at all those. So, if now is not the right time for you, but you want to have a combo, that makes a lot of sense. we're really focused on accounts payable, and we're really focused on trying to bring all of those cutting edge tools that everybody's talking about right now and bringing them to you in a very simple deployable manner where you don't have to be the expert on how to utilize AI just to add it to your AP automation stack. We've done a lot of the legwork on our end to build those tools in from the ground up, and really you just get what is sort of a traditional software as a service experience with a back end supported by modern AI that I'll kind of point to as we go through this here. So I like to think of accounts payable in two buckets. So there's the first bucket, which is you're getting your invoices in, you have to get some sort of approval, validation on those, and then get them into your ERP, Business Central in this case. So that's phase one. Read those invoices, get them where they need to go. And then the second half of that is the payments piece, where, great, you got your invoice entered, you got your coding assigned, everything's perfect on that, but you still have to pay it, and that'll be the second piece. So what we're focused on with this slide here is that invoicing side of it. So this is sort of our very distilled down process flow to kind of give you a zoomed out view on how our invoicing side works. The first stage in this is sending your invoices into what we call Magic Capture, and that's our AI first, what historically would be called OCR or image capture. It's AI from the ground up now, so that enables us to do a lot of cool things with it. But basically, take all your invoices, throw them into Magic Capture. We'll do all of the legwork to capture everything necessary to get it to the correct person to review. That's where RouteWise comes in. It's our workflow engine that I'll show you shortly here. And that will automatically get things to the correct person. You won't have to manually send out emails, or, in some cases, people still send paper around to get those approvals. You'll migrate away from that process. And then we have an easy to use interface that is available on the web to actually approve those invoices. You don't have to be a licensed BC user to access our approval system. So a lot of companies we work with extend this out to like regional managers, department managers, people who aren't like, ERP type users, but they still have a stake in the invoice and they want to validate that. And we make it an easy way to get those users access to the system in a nice, easy to follow web interface. And then, of course, we'll push that information into BC once we've got all the necessary capture and approval. But the most important thing of all of this is just by using the system at each step of the way, that is going to flow back into the capture engine that we've built, and it's going to continually learn and get better. So if you adjust a code or a dimension on an invoice that you see in our system, the next time that invoice comes through, it's going to be better. We're going to continually learn different like vendor pseudonyms, if you will. If you have a slightly different vendor name than what's on the invoice, we'll start to learn that. We'll match on it. And the same holds true for the approval routing. We've got tools built in that'll help you sort of adapt and build that workflow as you go and enable you to make those approvals and really start building the workflow. Makes the onboarding process easy that, a lot of these things happen as you use the system versus some like big setup at the top of everything. So I've already talked a bit about the AI capture and why it's really transformative. The things that we track on that is basically what we call zero-touch invoices. And that means were we able to capture the invoice to a point where there's no adjustments necessary before it's something that's transactable in your ERP system. And across all our customers, a million different invoice templates, scraps of paper that people write things on and call it an invoice. We hit about 96% of our invoices that are processed through are zero touch, which means that, that's all stuff that requires zero data entry from anybody on your team. If you're in AP, sometimes there's weird one-offs. That's usually what makes up the 4%, but we've got processes to handle that as well. Our goal is always to automate as much as possible while having those off-ramps to send it out to people as necessary. I mentioned that it learns as you go, which means that there's no templates, so you don't have to set anything up on that. I've said real-time learning about 6 times so far, so we won't harp on that. And the other thing that we're really good at is multi-location capture. And what I mean by that is if you have multiple facilities, multiple departments that are receiving invoices in, our system can learn what those dimensions are as they're related to those locations. We can read shipping addresses and interpolate that sort of data as well. And that's one of the things that makes our system unique is that ability to learn that location data on the fly, which means that setup is even easier and, that's how you get to 96% is you have to be smart enough to apply dimension codes based on locations as well, which is sort of how we get to that phase. Another big differentiator about us as a solution in the market, I don't have to tell you that there's a lot of AP automations providers out there, but we've really focused our setup and BC integration in a way that makes sense with how people already use Business Central, and doing so makes a big difference. So you can talk to somebody who claims they have AP automation solutions that integrate with Business Central, and what they might mean is they're giving you an Excel file which is technically compatible with BC, and that complicates really the whole process. Now you have a whole separate system that you need to manage as well. We're built inside BC wherever it was necessary, makes the setup easy, and I can touch on that in the demo as well and talk about the different syncs that happen because the details matter on that. And I'll make sure to show you the wizard on that as well when we get to the live demo portion.
Just to interrupt, Kevin, I like how they use Excel, which is a Microsoft product, right? So
I
they're
know, right?
staying within the Microsoft ecosystem is how they can position that.
I see it a lot. We get a lot of customers from people who are mad at their current AP automation provider because they promised some integration that just turns out didn't really exist.
Yep.
And so Wing two of this is the payment side. It's kind of everything that we talked about in reverse, where things started with the vendor, went through an approval process, went into your ERP. Now we're going the other direction when you want to issue a payment. Create your payment in BC, goes out for approval as necessary, and then we disperse those payments out to your vendors. We're definitely sort of the simple to add on version of vendor payments. We focus primarily on paper checks and ACH payments that will, at the end of the day, come from your accounts. They'll look like your payments. And most importantly on this is we also do have a vendor vault or a vendor portal that allows vendors to check on status, make actually opt in to receive ACH payments, and hopefully avoids them calling you with questions about their invoice status and emailing you sensitive ACH information. That can all be taking place directly in our portal, which I'll show you a bit of once we get a demo here. So I think we're good. Yeah, I'll take control. Cool. So I should be sharing now. Hopefully all looks good on your side. If not, Sam, let me know, but I think we're good.
Yep.
Sweet. So I'm logged into our product itself, Fidesic. I'll take you through a quick example. Again, I'm going to be kind of light on the details here because we're going to be short on time, but happy to get into the weeds on these things. And if you throw a question in the chat, we'll get to it at the end as well. So first part of the process, we need to get our invoices captured. We have a lot of different methods to do that. The most common way to do it is going to be by email. So we'll set up a custom email address for you, and you can just submit your invoices directly to this address. It'll be your company name. You can set up a forwarding rule with your existing AP account. That'll flow right into our inbox for capture, and really, we're going to scrape all the data off of the invoices. The question is, how do we scrape all that data, and what sort of things are we scraping? So the important thing to note, like I mentioned, integrations really matter for these sorts of things, is we're not just like blindly reading text off of a document and calling it good. One of the things that we're going to be doing is syncing your vendors in real time from Business Central, and we're going to be syncing your chart of accounts and your dimensions in real time from Business Central as well. So we're always going to have up-to-date info, and as opposed to us just taking random guesses on what vendor it should be, we're going to look up your vendor list and actually pick a valid vendor from your BC setup, pick the addresses on it, and that's then used to drive how the coding works. If you've taken the time to set up recurring purchase lines or default codes on your vendors, we're going to sync all that as well, which gives us a great starting point to actually start doing our capture on the invoices themselves. Not necessary to get started to have all that stuff, but it will speed up our learning process a bit. So what I have here is an invoice that I sent in earlier to our capture process. It's pretty decent quality in terms of what you would expect capture for. It doesn't have to be this good. It's kind of just easier to make a quick PDF for my demo purposes. This could be a black and white scan of a crumpled up piece of paper and your results are going to be the same. A couple years ago, I wouldn't have said that's the case, but the technology is really advanced to the point where Quality kind of doesn't matter anymore. You can snap a quick photo with your phone, send that into Capture, and that's good enough at this point that we can scrape all that data. So we'll pick your vendor, we'll assign GL codes, dimensions to it automatically. We'll grab your amounts, of course, your totals, your invoice number. If there's a PO number on it, we'll grab that information as well. And all that's going to be captured automatically. So functionally, this is what an invoice looks like in our system. And because I set up an approval workflow engine, which I'll talk about very briefly because it can really get into the weeds on it. The thing that you really need to take away is if you can draw it out in like either a whiteboard or a Visio, what sort of rules you want, we can map it. Mine's just based on departments, amount, and vendor. There can be dollar amount thresholds. There can be either or approvals. There can be GL code based rules, location based rules. Anything that we captured can be used, and we'll be happy to help you build that out as a part of the onboarding process. And then it's really just a matter of maintaining it, which we also have some tools built in that in a full demo, I'd give you a bunch more info on. But for this purpose, we'll just say that there's lots of ways to manage this that don't require you having to be an expert in our system. Sort of standard personnel changes or vacations, we've got tools around that make it really easy to keep that up to date. So me as an approver, I would have received an email notification from our system letting me know that I have invoices to approve. I can also see here, just like most websites you're used to, we got a bell icon to let me know what's most important. I've got 4 invoices I need to approve. Great. I navigate to that. I can see all 4 of my invoices here. There's expanded views and collapsed views depending on what view you actually want, but these are the 4 invoices that me as a user has to actually review. And if I click into any one of these, I can see all the details that we might need on that invoice. So from my perspective, I can just approve this. I can tag somebody and ask somebody a question in a discussion, and we are going to have a whole invoice history on this as well. So any modifications that have been made to that invoice throughout this entire process is going to be logged forever in our system. But to keep things moving, I'll add some approval notes and approve this invoice. And once I've done so, it'll take me to the next one in the approval process. But if I go and look for things that are approved, we can now see that that invoice that I approved is now in an approved status, which basically means we've attained all of the necessary approvals to send that over to Business Central. So quickly on this invoices received page, this is going to be a full history of everything. We will limit the views based on the user's level of permissions, but this is one of the things that people in accounts payable really love. It's just a quick snapshot of all the invoices that have been processed through. I applied a quick filter for approved here, but you can select date ranges, search based on vendor, search based on invoice number, whatever you need to get your data set. And then I said that you don't need to export it to Excel, but I also know that people in accounting love Excel. So we make it easy to get this data out as well. If you need to just send it to a spreadsheet for analysis, go for it. You can do so. We do have tons of built-in reports that I would normally go into more detail on, but just now we've got accrual reports, month-end sort of reports that make that whole process easier as well. And those are all built into the system. So once this is approved, that means it's ready to go to Business Central. So if I hop back to my Business Central system, thing one that I want to harp on quickly here is, like I said, we really focused on our BC integration to do it in a way that makes sense. There is a whole setup wizard that you'll run through when you install for the first time. All you'll need to do is go through this setup wizard. It'll hold your hand throughout the entire configuration. It'll create your account, start sending your vendors and dimensions and codes all up to our system. All you have to do is click through this setup wizard and you'll be at the same point I was. I did debate doing a live setup of our system to prove how quick it is and easy, but we'll save that for another day, I suppose. So if I want to get invoices into my BC system, what we'll do is we'll add a button right here, which is import Fidesic purchasing invoices. All I got to do is click that button and it'll go look up your account, go grab all of your currently approved invoices and create those purchasing records in BC directly. So we pulled one across. If I open that up, we can see that all the information was entered directly. I did think I need to change one thing on this that I didn't configure all the way. Forgive me. Cool. So all the information is filled out for you automatically. We created that. We also brought the PDF across into BC. That is optional. If you don't want us to send the PDF to BC, we can turn that off. but by default, it will be on. We've added the line, we've picked the department codes, we've picked the GL codes. Everything that you would expect is set here. And really, what most people will do is just import and then post everything. I just popped it open to show you a little more detail on it. But this invoice is ready to post at the time of import. We do bring it across in an unposted status in case you do need to review or make changes, but you might not need to do that. In most cases, you won't. You'll just bring it over and post it, and that's it. We created that, of course, in a demo world, one invoice, not that cool and impressive. That could have been 500. Your process would have taken the exact same amount of time. So that ends phase one, invoicing side. I'll be a little quicker on the payment side to not bore everybody too much with the details. But like I said, the payments process is going to be everything in reverse of what I just talked about. So if I go to our Fidesic payment journals window here, and I can suggest payments. So this should all be very familiar to you if you're used to regular BC. We change as little as possible on this to make it simple. So boom, we've created our payment line just like you would do normally in Business Central. And now you can upload this payment to our system, and that's what's going to initiate that payment on our end. So you just build your batch, you upload it. We'll move that payment over to an archive batch and then a post batch. And then if I go over to our side, we can have an entirely separate payment approval process. Most companies think of this as like check signing is the equivalent in like a paper-based process, where you'll have your couple people on here who actually approve your payments, and those people will be able to review those payments on our end. And then we will handle the disbursement in whatever method you need. So if I click into this payment that I uploaded, we'll be able to see the invoice or invoices that are being paid by it. So as a payment approver, I have a quick snapshot of everything. This is like the digital equivalent of a check stub with all the invoices stapled to the back of it. You'll have all the invoices stapled to the back of the invoice here. You'll be able to see that this is going to go out via ACH. Everything that you need to approve this should be available to you here. So I can simply approve that payment, and then it's going to go into a payment batch. Like I said, what we focus on is ACH payments and paper check fulfillment. So if it was a paper check, we can print and mail that check out on your behalf. We will put the signature of the person who approved it onto the check file. So your paper check like record will match exactly who approved it on our end. We do support multiple signatures. And another thing that we sync from your BC system will be your checkbooks. So we'll sync your bank account up here, and that's what enables us to print those checks using your routing number, your return address. It'll look like from a vendor's perspective, they just came from you. You just didn't have to print and mail it. It's even got the right signature on it. And then ACH functions largely in the same way, is we will generate a notcha file for you, and we will deliver that in an encrypted manner to your bank directly. So for bank reconciliation processes, it's going to be exactly the same as your standard ACH process, but we give you this formal payment approval process, and we give you a direct connection into your bank. So there's no flat file of a notcha file to download that somebody could potentially mess with or alter. We'll send that to your bank directly. It's the most secure way to add ACH payments, but it doesn't really add any extra costs to you. If you're already doing ACH payments with your bank, you can just think of this as a better, more secure way. And there's a whole vendor portal piece that we probably won't have time to touch on here today, but it gives vendors the ability to opt in for those ACH payments, and you don't have to think about it. You just decide what needs to be paid. We'll pick the best available method and make sure that that gets synced back over to Business Central after that payment has been fulfilled. And your vendors will get paid in a quick and timely manner. So, like I said, condensed version, we can go into more details if you want to chat later about it. Definitely reach out. But that is really the two halves of things, with a focus on, just adding on to existing BC processes and taking out some of the legwork for you.
Love it. Thank you, Kevin. I
Yeah.
was going to say, just because you have that vendor portal, we also have our client portal, which
hmm
sounds like it's right, kind of same but opposite. That might have to be a follow-up conversation for
Yeah, we could probably combine those pretty easily, right? I
yeah,
would think
for
so.
sure. I think now actually might be a really good time to tackle a couple questions that we've had coming through, if you're cool with that,
Sure.
while it's still fresh.
Yeah, I
So
just pulled it up.
yeah, and I can audibly read that out for you. So Benjamin had kind of a two-parter question.
hmm
Part one, does Fidesic allow matching POs in BC to be matched to PI that comes through Fidesic?
Yep. So we'll go do that lookup based on the PO number that we can capture on that and do the receiving based on that. So that is something that we look up at the time of import. So
Awesome.
we'll go match. Yep. And
And
we'll
then
take that
part two was
question.
actually one I was going to bring up as well, because you talked about this kind of that review portion within BC. But Benjamin's follow up was after a PI goes through approval in Fidesic, can it be automatically posted when it comes to Business Central?
Yep. So it's going to be a setup in BC. I'm trying to remember what the terminology is in BC. You can like schedule jobs, I think it's called. Um, so because we're nested so tightly in BC, you have access to all the BC automation tools that are already built into it. So people will commonly set up an auto post function that checks for anything new, like on a hourly or daily level, and then that'll go through and auto post everything. So it does require a setup on the BC side of things, but once it's set up, it's set and forget, and it'll just operate normally. Again, because we're at the end of the day, we're really just doing like standard things in Business Central. We're just automating as much as possible. So you can set up a scheduled task or a scheduled job to do that for you.
Nice. And then we had one other question that came in from Kenneth. Kenneth's asking, does your vendor payment automation monetize cards that pay merchants cash back?
Not currently. It is on our roadmap. Right now, we're just sort of the more simple payments provider out there. Obviously, a lot of AP automation does focus on card payments. Some view it as a flaw, some view it as a benefit. I talk to people that sort of hate the payment and card payment method that everybody's pushing, but it is on our roadmap as an option. It's never going to be something that we force, though. And then I see the other one of is Fidesic only available for BC users currently? It does not matter. So you need a BC user to like set it up, but your approvers don't have to be BC users. They can be outside of that context.
Perfect. Awesome questions, team.
Yeah, I appreciate the questions. That's great.
And on that note, we're going to talk about how awesome cards are. Uh, so,
Yeah, do it. Well, it's a different side of the house. It is more important on the other side of the house for sure.
for sure. So, kind of doing a hard pivot then, right? We talked about money out, but now let's talk about money in, right? Because we need some money in the bank so that we can pay our vendors. Um, so B2B payments, what are some of the challenges that are currently occurring in the AR space? And we've really identified three huge buckets. One of which I think is kind of the biggest that we see pretty consistently across the board in B2B is slow traditional payment cycles. So when it comes to getting money, right? When we make a sale, right? We get a sales order and we send out that invoice. A lot of the times it can take, right, weeks, even months. I think some updated data that's kind of contradicts this slide. This says 28 days plus. I'm confident that we could put the number 40 days plus is kind of current statistics on this, but it takes a long time for customers to pay those invoices, right? Especially if they don't have invoice automation tools like we just saw. It can be a super manual process. There can be a lot of human error, and it's just very inefficient, right? We want to look at different ways that we can automate that. So that's a big challenge for AR teams right now. On top of that, there's kind of this disconnect in the buying experience. When we think of B2B payments, a lot of the times we think of printing out paper checks, right? Stuffing envelopes. Same with invoicing, right? We were just talking about receiving crumpled up invoices. That's still super common. I want to say something like 64% of B2B payments are still made via paper check, which is, for lack of a better term, very archaic. And B2B buyers are craving a more consumer-like experience. If you look at kind of the current makeup of AR and AP professionals, right? They're getting into some of these younger generations. They're primarily millennials now. Even Gen Z is starting to get to this, and they don't want to utilize old tools, old disjointed tools. So they want more of that consumer-like experience where they can just hit a button, it's paid off, we're good to go. So the big overall arching theme of this is meeting our buyers where they are. And then lastly, there's just this overall demand for e-commerce growth. How can we make things more digital? How can we get online? That's a big challenge that a lot of finance teams and leaders are trying to tackle within their organizations. So with that said, I had mentioned this clunky invoicing process that we see pretty consistently today, even in some of these large enterprise level organizations. It boggles my mind that they're still doing things like this. But if you look at a non-automated invoicing process, right? Step one, customer makes a purchase. Woohoo, we should be celebrating. We're generating revenue, we're making money. However, we're not actually getting cash in the bank at that time, right? This is B2B, it's not consumer payments where it's instantaneous. There's a process. So at this point, oh boy, I got to prepare myself to talk through this because it's a lot of steps, right? There's this invoicing process where we have to generate an invoice and then somehow get that to the customer. If it's manual, if it's paper process, that's going to be via probably USPS, maybe FedEx, but it's going to take some time. So there's going to be some time that passes. Minimum, you're probably not overnighting an invoice, right? So it's going to take probably 2 to 3 days to arrive. Customer receives that invoice. As we heard with Kevin, is that there's some sort of approval process that needs to take place. COVID kind of shook things up where you used to have a home office or not a home office, but a centralized office where I could walk down the hallway and give that invoice to somebody for approval. Right now, with work from home being much more common, it might be a little bit trickier to get that invoice to the right person. Um, so eventually that gets approved, payment submitted. If it's a paper check, envelope gets stuffed, it gets sent in the mail. Another 2 to 3 days get passed. Then we receive the payment. Then you have your own depositing process that has to go through. And then eventually that money's going to hit your bank. At a minimum, right, it's going to take a week. If everybody's really on top of their stuff, it's going to take probably 7 days at best case scenario. Again, typically closer to 40 days, sometimes even 60 plus days. When you introduce more automation to that, more digital options, um, right? Digital payment options like ACH, even card, virtual card are becoming much more prevalent. And you provide a solution that integrates into your native ERP, in this case, Business Central, right? We can literally issue out that invoice at the point of sale, have that remitted and paid back and posted within 24 hours. Typically, a majority of these are going to get within that 1 week period. So it's going to make our customers, our buyers happier, and of course, it's going to make our bank accounts much happier. So really to share with you kind of how that process looks in the actual BC environment, I'm going to turn this over to Carlton. Take it away.
Thank you there, Sam. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. And then while this pulls up, I do want to highlight a few things that often get overlooked when we look at the true life cycle of issuing an invoice and getting paid, pretty much wrapping up what Sam just showed us there into one quick summarization from my side. I think there are things that you can put a monetary price to, like reducing interchange fees or lowering monthly processing costs. But there are those intangibles, those overheads it costs when you have to chase someone for an overdue invoice, the time spent bringing paper checks into your ERP, or even as something as simple as going to another screen, another browser, another window, just to process those payments, maybe through a virtual terminal. These core pain points are really what PayTrace wants to focus on and help with, automating a lot of those manual processes, but still ultimately keeping you inside of your ERP, Business Central in this case, wherever possible. And with that being said, I'll show you three core components from our offering, but I'm only scraping the surface here, just like what Kevin looked at on the AP side. So I do welcome anyone who's curious, anyone who wants to get the whole experience, to reach out to the team to get a more thorough demo after the call. Coming into Business Central, the three core components we'll look at, first one being the customers, is the ability to bring payment methods and tie that directly to the customer card. We'll look at my CO test customer here, and we'll look at a few screens that PayTrace has introduced to the customer card, which is our authorizations and payments. Coming into authorizations and payments and the customer payment methods, it's at this screen, and at this point in time, you as a merchant, you can bring in credit card data or ACH data on behalf of your customer, tie it to the customer card, and use that for some of the automation we'll see down the road later. So whether that's a single card, 2 cards, 3 cards, 10 cards, or again, an ACH, you do have the ability to set those down here and even set what is active and what is default. For the case of this demo, though, we will be looking at our Visa sample card here, but choosing which one you want for a sales document is as easy as a dropdown, which we'll take a look at as well. Escaping the first scenario and really looking at the next one. So I'll create a new document tied directly to this customer, and we'll create a sales invoice. Before going into the sales invoice, I always like to pause. We touch the 3 different scenarios a merchant might have with respect to a sales document. So whether they're generating a sales quote, we can fetch out an authorization to make sure there are funds to hold against that document. We can do a sales invoice in the event they might be something more on the digital side, so there is no pick, pack, and ship. And then we can also do sales order in the event there is a pick, pack, and ship, in the event there is procurement or something that does require the sales order workflow process. For the case of this demo, though, we'll go ahead and look at a sales invoice and add in everyone's favorite Athens desk. What we've done so far is no different than what a merchant would do in their day-to-day inside of Business Central. They're creating a sales document, tying it to a customer card, adding in a few items there, and they're ultimately ready to post the document. The part where the payment automation comes from PayTrace, there's going to be 2 different flows we're looking at here. We're going to look at a customer that might have net terms, whether that's net 30, net 60, net 90, and we'll also have a customer that is cash on delivery or due upon receipt. We'll go ahead and look at that first scenario though here and change this customer to a net 30 term customer and post this sales invoice. You will get a notice that the invoice or payment was added to the client portal, and you can even move and navigate to the posted sales invoice just to have that ready on a second screen. If I pivot from the merchant experience to now the end customer experience, so I'm going to CO test email. If you have the correct email on file, they will be receiving an email that was sent 0 minutes ago here, which is that posted sales invoice ending in 3821. Let's just validate that with Business Central and see 3821 there. The whole purpose of this experience is you never want to charge a net terms customer if you want to give them the option to pay within their window. So what this does is it sends them to our self-service client portal. The real value of this, and something that Sam mentioned earlier, is you want to give them the capability of paying these invoices whenever they want. They don't want to have to call into a line, speak to a representative and say, hey, I'm CO Test, I'm ready to make a payment. The customer can directly do this on their own accord. It's browser friendly. They can open it up on their phone, on their tablet, on their desktop, and then ultimately navigate to pay the invoice. Upon clicking pay invoice, they'll get the same data they saw within that email and a nice little pay button here. The pay button will present the saved payment methods that they do have on file. So whether that's Visa, in the case of my 3 cards here, or if they want to add a new card or a new bank account, they'll always have that functionality available to them. If they choose any of these payment option methods, they will always have the ability, and I like to always pause there for just a few seconds and double click on this feature. We always want to encourage end customers to make payments against invoices. So we understand that merchants struggle with chasing overdue invoices, calling customers to let them know, hey, your invoice is due in a week, your invoice is overdue a week, or your invoice is coming up on X amount of days. Whenever they're at their self-service client portal, they will always have the ability to make bulk payment on any overdue or outstanding invoices. You can see I have quite a few here that are outstanding. This one's due March 9th or was due March 9th, May 1st, all the way to July 6th. They can lump all these payments into this one singular invoice, even if they landed on this, to ultimately encourage the customer to make payment on these overdue invoices. If they decide to do next and make payment against that, you can see our total has ballooned from that original 1,000 or 2,000 original invoice amount to a lump sum of just about 18,000. You're not paying 18,000 against one document. Instead, you're doing a lump sum across all of those documents. And what we will do on the PayTrace side within Business Central is correctly reflect the entries with each respective document, close out that document to be sure that you do have a singular payment. In the event, you of course have to refund an invoice or items are being returned to a warehouse. I won't pay this just yet though. Instead, we'll go to my favorite feature of the client portal if I go to the My Account button here at the top left. I mentioned earlier, this is a fully self-service portal. So not only do we want to give the customers the ability to make payments, we want to give them full holistic view, a 360 view of how they are with respect to the processing, the purchasing, the invoicing, the payments, and all of that under your merchant organization. So on this home screen, it's really a high-level dashboard, but I do want to go into the invoices tab because I want to see those invoices we checked at the previous screen, because maybe, you know what, I want to pay a few more. I have quite a bit outstanding or past due. I would hope I'm never a customer for any of your organizations, because as you can see, I don't like to pay my invoices, but they can even see the ones that have been recently issued and are outstanding. There's that 2001 we just issued ending in 3821. And again, there's always the ability to pay a lump sum across any of these outstanding documents. Outside of this feature, we also give the historical context. So maybe a customer has the issue of chasing the merchant and going, merchant, I need a receipt for my invoice ending in 3765. Can you provide it to me? Accounting is looking for it. This self-service portal gives them full control in pulling that information. So whether or not they want a physical copy to print it, or just email the receipt again to the email on file, they'll always have that capability within the client portal to really cover the full self-service experience whenever they're landing on this page. Heading into payments, pretty straightforward. I won't go too into the weeds here. It's anytime a payment is processed, but I will highlight our wallet functionality. So in the event the customer wants to add in new payment methods, whether it's a card or a bank, they'll always have that capability. But maybe in the event they don't want to have this card on file, maybe they've canceled this card, or maybe they've been issued a new card, they will always have the ability to delete any payment method that they might have saved prior. So this covers our second scenario. The third scenario is really going to focus on the automation of our offering here. So let's go ahead and generate a new sales invoice. Repeat everything we did, but let's sell 3 Athens desks instead. In the prior example, we did change the payment terms code from cash on delivery to net 30, but this time let's keep it on cash on delivery and let's see what happens when we do nothing to the invoice, because we should be charging this customer at time of issuance. We'll give BC some time to think here. You will get a notice that the transaction has been approved, authorized, and successfully captured. It was also sent to the client portal that we saw not too long ago. So again, historical context is very important here. Whether or not the invoice was paid through Business Central or paid through the client portal, we'll always bring in all payment data to the self-service portal. If we head off into the posted sales invoice, under authorizations and payments and view payment history, here's where we now attach and associate the payment to the respective sales document. So if someone on the team is curious to see, was this invoice paid? What is the status of this invoice? I need to void the payment. I need to refund the payment. Whatever they need to do, they can always do this directly out of BC through the view payment history, depending on what their requirements are there. Closing off all of these 3 scenarios, I do want to show probably my favorite feature that we released in time, and that's our collections manager. This one doesn't focus on payments so much, but it does give the merchant the ability to see, how am I as an organization performing with respect to all of my customers? You as the merchant can set up your own custom AR aging bands. In the case of mine, I have 1 to 30, 31 to 60, 61 to 90, and you can see how much amount or what amount is outstanding within those AR aging bands. And then again, see who owes a large balance. I'll use my CO test as an example here. I owe just about 64,000 there. One of the great features of this collections manager is the ability to assign it to specific reps that might have BC users. So you can see my CO test is assigned to Sam Johnson. Thank you, Sam, for keeping me honest about how much I owe here. But Sam is in charge of this specific customer card. So it's up to Sam to go, hey, Carlton, quite a bit overdue there. We need to chase you, or we need to close your account, or you might need to even block your customer from shipping, invoicing, or everything as a whole. So this one double clicks a little bit on the automation piece because one, we're encouraging you to pay through the client portal, but understandably, unless you are taking control of their computer and making the payment, there's only so much you can do. So sometimes you do need a push from someone internally to chase that customer, which is really what this collections manager does. Rather than go into each respective customer card, you can see all the customers within this screen on one simple page. And then again, you can filter, you can add, you can create as many columns as you wish for whatever data you and the team need with respect to any reporting. To go full circle on what we've covered, the three core components with a little bit of a sneak peek of my favorite feature, which is this collections manager. But I do welcome any and all questions or to go into the weeds wherever needed, whether it's another demo, you have a specific use case that you did not see on this call, or even, hey, we've searched out and other AR offerings cannot do this feature. Can you do it, PayTrace? Our team is always happy to accommodate those requests and then see what we can do from either a roadmap perspective or even a one-off enhancement perspective. I'll pass this one back off to you, Sam.
Thank you, sir. I don't appreciate the fact that you assigned me the worst customer in the world that's not taking advantage of all these great tools that we offer. Uh,
I did that a little bit on purpose. I was hoping that you would keep me honest here.
Apparently, I'm not doing my job because you owe me about $60,000 there. Um, so awesome presentation. Thank you, Carlton. And like you said, that's just kind of tip of the iceberg on some of the stuff that we did. That's the core functionality, but there's a lot of really great tools built into our AR solution. So I did want to kind of wrap this up by adding to this, right? With the payment side, with the integration side with BC, that is just a portion. That's the actual functional part of thing, and we're solving a lot. But if you've ever had to deal with merchant services, if you've ever had to deal with right payment processing, you probably understand that there are a lot of different layers to it, and usually a lot of different entities that you need to work with. One great thing that PayTrace does better than anybody is we are a full tech stack. So instead of saying, "Hey, we have an awesome AR solution, but you're going to have to use XYZ for merchant services," and they're probably going to set you up with some other third, fourth party gateway. We own and manage that process, right? So we own our technology in the actual embedded payment side. We also own the technology of the payments gateway on the back end that's actually processing these transactions. It's sending all of these data files out to the card brand networks to through Nacha. And we also do merchant services, right? So instead of having to manage a ton of different vendors, right, we're going to make that as simple as possible, kind of your one-stop shop for payment processing. So just to kind of wrap all this up, right, kind of the value proposition that we're bringing. Number one, getting paid faster, right? We're bringing you into the 21st century finally, and digitizing your payments, whether that's card payments, ACH payments, right? We're going to do all of that. What that's going to do is that's going to free up your personnel, right? All of your staff. Um, they're going to be able to move away from a lot of this tactical copy pasting manual work and actually have time to do more strategic things, right? That's the point of automation. Better visibility. Carlton showed us we have tracking down to the minute on these invoices. So you have a ton of data at your fingertips. You can see what's going on with those outstanding invoices, and keep your customers more accountable. Hopefully your customer isn't Carlton and they're going to pay a little bit better. But if you do have a Carlton, right, we can kind of
You should at least know
honest.
about them, right? You
Yeah,
should be able to identify them if they
that's
exist.
right.
I hope you're
Exactly.
not issuing a Carlton or sending out Carlton more digital goods or physical goods if he's that overdue. So hopefully that helps you there.
Yeah.
And I need to do a better job talking you up. You need to have a bad name for that one instead of yourself. Um, and then security, right? Right now, I think more than ever, we're running into so many scammers, phishing, and there's this huge need for making sure everything's encrypted, locked down, and that you're protected. And we're going to provide all the best PCI compliance, Nacha compliance, and security tools to make sure that you're covered. One thing that we didn't get into on this call was transaction fees. There's a cost to getting paid, and sometimes that cost can be pretty high. We're going to help with that. There's actually been some new things going on in the card industry, specifically around Visa with their new CEDP program, which is kind of disrupting a lot of B2B companies, and it could potentially cost them a significant amount of money if they're not up to date with that. So we've got some really great tools that we didn't talk about, but we actually have some upcoming webinars on that. Would love to share some information with you after the fact on how we can keep some of those costs down. And then, of course, we're going to have some of the best support. So with that said, what the heck do you do next, right? This is some really great information, but you actually want to dive into this a little bit deeper. We've got some contact information for you. Luckily, there's a lot of parity between our emails. So sales at either Fidesic or paytrace.com, whoever you feel like talking to at the moment. But we also have some QR codes. So pull out your phones, scan these. Kevin has been kind enough to put his actual booking calendar. Thank you, Kevin. I saw that.
I know
Uh,
it's scary. It's already out there in the world. My booking calendar is already everywhere. So if you want some time with me, go for it. That's what that's for.
That's perfect. So reach out to him. We are not as confident about putting our direct booking calendar in a QR code, but this will take you to our landing page with a lot more information on the PayTrace solution and a form that you can fill out to get in front of the right person, whether that's Carlton, myself, or somebody from our partnership sales team, right? We can have that conversation. I'm going to open this up for Q&A. Carlton, I'll send this one over to you. We got a question coming from Kenneth. Cross-border payments. International payments. Can you speak to that at all?
I can absolutely. I think the idea of cross-border payments depends on which and who is the cross-border person. So we can always, of course, accept international cards to a US entity or US issued account, authorizing in USD, remitting in USD, etc. When we start looking at cross-border payments where we might need to authorize in Canadian dollar, we don't have that functionality just yet, nor do we have the functionality to process payments for local processing or local acquiring, which means authorizing in Canadian dollar and remitting in Canadian dollar. It is something we have been asked for quite a bit. So we are looking at what it might entail. But as of this point in time, we do not have any offerings to do anything outside of US dollar.
Yeah. So US dollar, I will add to that if you do have opportunities in something else, run it by us. It's more data that's going to help us make, the best decisions on how we want to proceed moving forward. What's the next best way to improve our technology? So please definitely have that conversation with us. Okay, I think that's it. I want to do a special thank you to our partner in Fidesic, Kevin, and the other Fidesic staff that's here on this call. Thank you guys so much for hosting this together with us. Really appreciate our partnership and looking forward to seeing this grow.
Yeah, same. It was awesome. A lot of stuff that you guys say resonates. That whole slide on security and why you should pick PayTrace felt like could have plucked that from our side. All that same stuff is true. So it feels like a great natural fit.
Yep, a lot of parity there. So, team, thank you again, audience, for checking this out. If you have friends that you think could benefit from this, we will have this posted on our channels here shortly. So, thank you all and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.